فأردنا أن يبدلهما ربهما خيرا منه زكاة وأقرب رحما. فأردنا, so we intended, أن يبدلهما ربهما. Rabbuhuma is the subject, that their Lord, yubdilahuma, would quickly replace for them, khairan, someone better, minhu, than him, zakatan, in terms of purity, wa akraba, and closer, ruhman, in terms of mercy and keeping the familial relationship. Let's elaborate a little bit more. Fa'aradna, so we intended, that's easy. An yubdilahuma is, as I said, this construct is in the present tense, yubdilu, abdala yubdilu, and an is forcing it to be in the nasab status, an yubdila. This structure is primarily that present tense, that he does, and whatever the verb stands for, it is changed to that he changes. And who changes? Rabbuhuma, that is the subject, that their Lord changes or replaces. And it's in the future because it can be present, future, both present or future. So would quickly replace for them because that's going to happen in the future for them. Khairan, better, but someone better, because the substitute or the replacement or the change is a person, someone better, minhu, than him, than the ghulam that we talked about, the boy, the naughty boy, whom Khizr al-Islam killed upon the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is being clarified now. Zakatan, in terms of purity. Why zakatan is mentioned? Aqatalta nafsan zakatan? Have you killed an innocent person, an innocent soul? So in that context, that answer is being replied to, that Allah plans to give them someone better than him in terms of purity. Also, in the last verse, verse number 80, two things were mentioned, tughyanan wa kufran. So this is also in relation to kufr. So someone purer than him. I mean, this was a rebellious, obstinately rebellious child. So anyone substitute would be better than him. I mean, usually, unless someone is worse than that, but that's an exception. We are not discussing exceptions over here. So in that context also, this is being talked about. So Allah intended that because he would, cause his parents to suffer by his obstinate rebellion and kufr, both disbelief and ungratefulness. So that we discussed, right? So in terms of purity, we understand that. Akuraba. Now, why is this akuraba? This is in the comparative pattern. Af'alu, but this af'ala because it's a detail of the sentence. So someone better than him, replace for them someone better and someone closer. So in that sense, it's a detail of the sentence. Detail of what? Detail of not a verb over a detail of an ism. Khairan. Khairan needs a clarifying ism. So that is why it is in the nasab status. Waqraba, and closer. Ruhman. We need to understand this as well. Again, closer. This again, you can tie it back to the previous sentence. Tughyanan. Because there it was obstinate rebellion. So what can substitute for the obstinate rebellion? Someone closer in terms of mercy now and keeping familial relationship. Now, Ruhman needs to be discussed a little bit more detail. Akraba is again closer. So closer in terms of what? So that needs a further clarifying statement. Closer in terms of Ruhman. What is Ruhman? It is mercy. Rahma, the root word, trilateral root word. I think it's Rahuma, Rahima. I'm not sure. You'll have to check it up in the dictionary. Anyway, Rahm, we know that in terms of mercy. And Rahm also means womb. And one of the dictionary or lexical meanings itself is sort of derived from womb. So familial relationship. So in keeping the familial relationship. So that is also intended. An interesting point to note over here is so rahma with a ta marbuta, that's the standard form for mercy. So you shorten it, you change it to masculine form, you omit the ta marbuta, you shorten it, and the meaning gets more enhanced because it's more generic. It's not masculine, it's a generic sort of word rather than feminine, which just limits it to mercy. It becomes broader in scope. The word is shorter, but the shorter means when ta marbuta was paired, it was more specific. It's more broad in that sense. So both mercy as well as familial relationship is connected over here. And there was yurhikuhma, that he would arhaka yurhiku, he would cause them to suffer. So that also is being brought over here. So okay, he will not cause them to suffer, and these are the reasons why. So all of these are beautifully connected. So if you read the English translation now with this enhanced background, it becomes more sort of sense, though it was actually not that difficult. So it made sense in its translation in any case, in any way. So we intended that the Lord would quickly replace for them someone better than him in terms of purity and closer in terms of mercy and keeping the familiar relationship. But not last verse. Am I missing something? I think yes. Verse number 72, that arhaka yurhikahuma was there. So that is also being brought forth over here. He would not cause them to suffer. Okay, the point that I was making, not last verse, verse number 80, but verse number 79, when I was a bit emotional, not bit, I was quite emotional, I was overwhelmed with emotion, so to say, is because when I said that according to me is not one verse but two verses, and you were probably shocked to the extent that you were wanting to label me as a kafir. How can I change verse? The number of verse, the count will get changed. Now I come to the reason. I said yesterday, I mean, in relation to verse number 80, that unless we discuss verse number 81 also, we will not be in a position to appreciate that fully. So we'll do that today. There, the verse started, Amma al-Safinatu, Amma as-Safinatu, Amma as-Safinatu. That was verse number 79. What was verse number 80? How did verse number 80 start? What did verse number 80 start with? It was wa amma al-ghulamu, wa amma al-ghulamu. Can you see the pattern now? And in verse number 79, it was a long verse. We divide into two parts. The second part started with fa'aradtu, fa'altu pattern. I do something. I intended. And so if that was a single sentence, then 80 and 81 should be a single sentence as well, because this part starts with fa'aradna, and so we intended, right? We intended. You see the connection? 79 contain both the parts. 80 and 81, here both the parts are in separate verses, separate ayats, so to say. Ayatan or ayatain. Let's forget about that for a moment. Let's not confuse that. And it's beautiful. And verse number 82, when we discuss, it will become even more profound. The discussion will become even more profound. So we'll see when we reach 82, when we discuss 82. Okay. And to add to that discussion, 79 was fa'aradtu. I did. Fa'aradna is we did in the plural pattern, first person plural. Why is that? In the story in relation to the ship or the boat, it is Khizr al-Islam who apparently damaged it. Okay, it was upon the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he took the blame upon himself. I intended. He did not pass the blame. I mean, it's not befitting Khizr al-Islam to do that. But here, what happens? Here, it is killing a boy. So he cannot blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, okay, Allah intended. He does not do that. Allah intended that because okay. So there is this betterment because their parents, his parents were to be substituted with a child better than him. Simply put, better than him in terms of whatever, in terms of purity, in terms of closeness, which again is in terms of mercy as well as familial relation. That's good is going to happen, but to make that happen, Allah intended the first that boy Ghulam has to be killed, that naughty boy has to be killed, because he's naughty now, he will grow up to be a monster later on, and he would cause much suffering to his parents who were true believers. All of these we have discussed. So that act, he puts a blame on himself, the act of killing, and that is going to be replaced by someone better that he is associating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you see the beauty. So we intended, not I intended anymore. We intended. And also, I mean, this is the primary meaning which I have discussed already, but the secondary meaning I should have discussed earlier is I acted on behalf, on the authority entrusted to me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we intended. And the primary meaning is what I had already discussed previously, is he is taking the blame upon himself and passing the goodness that comes about in the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is crediting that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This will become more clear. So that was I intended, this is we intended, and in the next verse, when we discuss that verse number 82, it is he intended, Allah intended. Interesting, three different positions, and we'll see that will make the discussion even more profound. So you're getting the sense what I'm saying. So if this is two verses and it makes sense, it necessitates then that verse number 79 should have been split into two sentences. That is my claim is that originally is two sentences. We have made an error in full stop. So that was amma. Wa is fine. Wa amma. That's wa is the continuation, because there are three events, so it's connecting with wa. Amma and wa amma. There was amma as-safinatu, and al-safinatu is read as-safinatu or amma as-safinatu, and here it was amma al-ghulamu, amma al-ghulamu. Fine. And there it was, because it was not separate in two sentences, there it came in the middle, the second part of the sentence. It started with fa'aradtu, fa'altu pattern hits, fa'aradna, fa'alna pattern. You're getting it? And when we read verse number 82, what is labeled as verse number 82 in the Musaf we have in our homes today, we'll gain more clarity on this issue. I think that's it then. I have tried my best. The verse itself is simple, but these discussions is somewhat complex, somewhat complicated. Again, you need to go back to verse number 79, 80 and 81 together. You need to hear it all again to appreciate it even more. I am sure that some level of appreciation would have developed by now. What I'm saying, it's very clear, 79 two parts. That is why 80 and 80 was in two parts. Otherwise, that would be in one part too. So let's just wind up this session by just reading the Arabic and the translation as we always do. فَأَرَدْنَا أَنْ يُبْدِلَهُمَا رَبُّهُمَا خَيْرًا مِنْهُ زَكَاةً وَأَقْرَبَ رُحْمًا. Ruhman also is an interesting word. So intended that the Lord would quickly replace for them someone better than him in terms of purity and closer in terms of mercy and keeping the familial relationship. I think that's it then. We'll continue with the next verses, which are also going to be very interesting, inshallah.